A clunk when you shift from drive to reverse, a shudder between gears at highway speed, a grinding sound from somewhere under the front end that was not there 6 months ago. 3 sounds, 3 different systems, 3 very different repair bills, and every single one of those owners thought they were maintaining their truck correctly. One paid for a flush, one trusted the monitor, one had no idea the grease fittings under his front end even existed. 7 maintenance products and habits are on trial today. 3 of them are quietly destroying GMC trucks. 4 of them are the reason some of these same trucks roll past 350,000 miles. The difference between those 2 groups of owners is not luck. It comes down to 7 decisions, and most owners are making at least one of them wrong. Let me start with the one that costs the most and leaves the least evidence behind. The transmission flush machine. You have seen this service offered at quick lube shops, at dealerships, and at chains that will do anything fast for a flat fee. They hook your truck up to a machine, force fresh fluid through the entire system under pressure, and send the old fluid out the other side. It sounds thorough. It looks professional. And based on what experienced transmission rebuilders consistently report seeing, it is one of the most reliable ways to accelerate a transmission failure without the owner ever knowing what caused it. Here is the mechanism. Your transmission, whether it is a 6L80, a 6L90, or one of the newer 10-speed units, has been operating with the same fluid for thousands of miles. Over time, microscopic wear particles accumulate in that fluid. Tiny pieces of clutch material, metal dust from bearing surfaces, friction modifier residue. These particles settle into low-flow areas of the transmission. They are not moving. They are not causing problems. They are sitting. A flush machine changes that. It forces fluid through at pressures significantly higher than the system sees during normal operation. Rebuilders who work on these units say they can often tell when a transmission has been machine flushed before it ever arrives at their bench. The contamination pattern inside the valve body is different from what normal wear produces. The valve body is the decision-making center of your transmission. It contains dozens of precision bored passages and pressure-sensitive valves that control every shift, every engagement, every hold. When debris gets forced through those passages, the results are not immediate and dramatic. They are gradual and sneaky. Shifts start getting slightly harsh. The transmission begins hunting between gears. Engagement feels delayed. By the time the owner notices, the flush happened months ago. Nobody connects the dots. Think of it like a wrecking crew pressure washing a load-bearing wall. The surface looks cleaner when they are done. The structure underneath has been compromised. That is exactly what is happening inside the valve body. Shops sell flushes because they are fast, profitable, and the damage timeline insulates the shop from any connection to the outcome. You paid $150 to $250 for that service. A transmission rebuild on a 6L80 or 6L90 runs $2,000 to $4,000 at a reputable independent shop. Dealer pricing goes higher, and none of that paperwork will mention the flush. The right way to service your transmission fluid costs less than the flush. I will cover it later. But the machine flush, walk away every time. Now, let me address a whole aisle at your local auto parts store. Stop leak products and oil additives are marketed with the kind of confidence that belongs to things that have actually been tested. Restore your engine, reduce friction, stop leaks permanently. The bottles are impressive. The claims are not. Start with stop leak formulas. The active mechanism in most of these products is chemical swelling of rubber seals. If your engine has a small oil leak from an aging rear main seal or a tired valve cover gasket, the theory is that the stop leak compound will swell that seal back to its original diameter. Sometimes it works, temporarily. But the chemistry does not know which seal is leaking. It circulates through the entire lubrication system. reaching every seal and gasket in the engine. All of them start swelling. An overswollen seal becomes rigid and brittle. It cracks. Now you have multiple leaks throughout an engine that originally had one. Shops that see this pattern routinely report that the repair bill for the secondary damage is consistently worse than what fixing the original leak would have cost from the start. Oil additives are a different problem. Modern full synthetic oils that meet the DexOS specification carry a carefully engineered additive package: detergents, dispersants, anti-wear compounds, friction modifiers, and viscosity index improvers. The engineers who formulated that package spent years getting the balance right. When you pour in an aftermarket additive, you are not improving that system. You are disrupting it. Some additives change the viscosity profile in ways that matter enormously if your truck has AFM. The AFM solenoids that collapse and extend your lifter's run on precise oil pressure. Change the viscosity with a thick additive, and you change the pressure the solenoids see. Shops that specialize in GMV8 repairs report that AFM-related solenoid failures and lifter noise complaints are disproportionately common in trucks where owners have added viscosity-modifying products to the crankcase. On warranty, the Magnuson-Moss Act requires a manufacturer to prove that an aftermarket product caused the failure before denying coverage. They cannot reject a claim simply because an additive was found in the oil. But here is the practical reality. If the dealer finds an additive in your engine during a warranty dispute, you are starting an argument instead of a warranty claim. The simpler path is to never create that situation. Your GMC engine needs quality full synthetic oil meeting the DexOS specification, changed at the right intervals. Confirm the exact version required in your owner manual or by VIN lookup. No additives, no supplements. If your engine has a problem serious enough that additives feel like a solution, it has a problem serious enough to actually diagnose and fix. Now the maintenance habit that is sending more AFM engines to early retirement than almost anything else. Trusting the oil life monitor past 5,000 miles between changes on your GMC V8. GMC says to trust the system. The monitor can show 8,000, 10,000, or 12,000 miles remaining, and some owners run it all the way down. On the 5.3-liter and the 6.2-liter with AFM, the consequences are severe. The monitor is an algorithm. It tracks engine temperature, RPM patterns, and trip data to estimate degradation. It does not test the oil. It cannot measure actual viscosity. It cannot detect fuel dilution from short trip driving. It does not know whether your truck spent last weekend towing in 90-degree heat. It is modeling expected degradation from inputs that only partially represent what your oil is actually experiencing. On AFM engines, that gap matters enormously. NHTSA has documented that AFM-related lifter problems are linked to aerated oil, low oil levels, and excess carbon deposits. The AFM lifters cycle thousands of times during a normal drive, collapsing and extending on oil pressure. As oil degrades, the pressure consistency the solenoids depend on becomes less reliable. AFM lifter failures on high-risk model years, which cluster around 2007 through 2010 and 2014 through 2018, typically show up between 70,000 and 80,000 miles. Right in the middle of normal ownership, when the truck should still have years of reliable use ahead of it. Trusting the oil life monitor to 10,000 or 12,000 miles on one of these engines is like trusting a blood pressure reading taken when you are perfectly still. The number looks fine. The stress that causes the damage happens when no one is measuring. A synthetic oil change done yourself runs roughly $45 to $70. At an independent shop, expect $85 to $150. A full cam and lifter replacement on an AFM engine run $7,000 to $9,000 at a dealer. Independent shops come in lower, but this is still a repair bill that arrives right around the time you have paid off the truck. One additional oil change per year at the 5,000-mile mark instead of 10,000 costs roughly $100. Missing that window costs several thousand at minimum. Change your oil every 5,000 miles on your GMC V8. Regardless of what the monitor displays, use full synthetic meeting Dexos spec. Confirm the exact oil weight on your underhood sticker because the spec can vary by year. Quick thing before the good products. If this is changing how you think about maintenance, hit subscribe. New GMC content every week covering what works, what to avoid, and how to protect an engine you have worked too hard to pay off. Now the 4 that actually extend the life of these trucks. Seafoam treatment for your fuel system. Seafoam has been around since 1942. It is petroleum-based, not solvent-based, and that distinction matters. Harsh solvent-based cleaners can attack rubber seals and synthetic gaskets. Seafoam dissolves carbon deposits, varnish, and gum buildup without that chemical aggression. GMC trucks with direct injection engines, the 5.3-liter, the 6.2-liter, and the 2.7-liter turbo that debuted in the 2019 Sierra, all share a carbon problem. Port-injected engines from the previous generation washed their intake valves with fuel every cycle. Direct injection bypasses the intake valves entirely. Carbon builds up on the back of the valves, restricts airflow, and eventually affects throttle response and cold start behavior. Seafoam in the fuel tank every 3,000 to 5,000 miles helps dissolve that accumulation before it reaches the level requiring a mechanical intake cleaning. Owners who use it consistently report smoother throttle response and cleaner cold starts compared to trucks where carbon is allowed to build unchecked. A can of Seafoam costs $10 to $12. A mechanical intake cleaning at a shop costs $500 or more. Prevention beats restoration every time on these engines. One clarification: adding Seafoam to the crankcase every oil change is more aggressive than the product warrants. Use it primarily as a fuel system treatment. If you use it in the crankcase as an occasional deposit cleaner before an oil change, drain the oil promptly after. It is a tool for maintenance, not a permanent additive. Now the product most GMC owners have never heard of: a bypass oil filtration system. Your factory oil filter is a full-flow filter. Every drop of oil passing through the engine goes through it, which means the filter media has to be coarse enough to allow adequate flow at all times. Most factory filters catch particles down to 20 to 40 microns. Anything smaller passes through and stays in circulation. Think of it like a studio mixing session. The main speaker system handles the full frequency range. The reference monitor in the corner reveals what the main system cannot fully resolve. A bypass filter is the reference monitor for your oil system. It takes a small fraction of the total flow, roughly 10%, and runs it through a much finer element, down to 1 to 5 microns. That filtered oil rejoins the mainstream clean. Over time, the bypass system progressively polishes the entire oil supply down to a level the factory filter cannot reach. Oil analysis tests run by fleet operators comparing engines with bypass filtration to engines running factory filtration only show substantially lower concentrations of wear metals in the bypass-equipped engines. Lower wear metals mean less abrasive material cycling through your bearings, your camshaft, your lifters. The AFM system creates additional fine particles from the constant lifter cycling that a factory filter cannot capture. The 2.7-liter turbo produces additional contamination from bearing surfaces under boost heat. Both benefit specifically from what bypass filtration provides. System cost and installation typically runs $300 to $500 depending on setup. The filter element adds roughly $20 to $30 per oil change. For specific fitment on your VIN, contact the supplier directly. Do not rely on a universal chart. If you are planning to keep your GMC past 200,000 miles, this is one of the most cost-effective investments in the drivetrain, and it works best when paired with the next service. Drain and fill transmission service. This is what you do instead of a machine flush, and it costs less. Remove the drain plug from the transmission pan, let the fluid drain by gravity. Replace the filter, reinstall the pan, and refill with fresh fluid. No machine, no pressure, nothing moves that was settled. The process replaces roughly 40 to 50% of the total fluid volume per service. The remaining fluid stays in the torque converter and the cooler lines. That partial replacement is not a compromise. It is the correct approach. Each service refreshes roughly half the fluid, while allowing old and new fluid to blend gradually. Debris that settled in low flow areas stays settled. The valve body remains undisturbed. Do it every 30,000 to 40,000 miles, and the math compounds in your favor. 2 services over 60,000 miles replaces approximately 75% of the total fluid. 3 services over 90,000 miles puts you over 90% fresh. All of that without ever putting the transmission at risk. When you drain the fluid, check the pan before reinstalling it. A small amount of fine gray material is normal friction wear. Chunks of metal, thick black sludge, or coarse heavy debris is not normal. Catching that during a routine service could be the difference between a fluid change and a roadside breakdown. A drain and fill at a shop runs $80 to $150. A machine flush costs $150 to $250. You pay less for the service that is actually safe. For GMC trucks with the 6L80, 6L90, or the 10-speed transmissions, use Dexron 6 specifically, not a universal fluid. And finally, the 5-minute service most owners skip because they do not know it exists. Greasing ball joints and U-joints. Many GMC trucks, especially the heavier duty models, have greasable ball joints, tie rod ends, and U-joints in the drive shaft. Small fittings, called Zerks, allow you to inject fresh chassis grease directly into these components with a grease gun. Most owners never touch them. A few do not even know they are there. Ball joints carry the full weight of the front end while allowing the wheels to turn and the suspension to travel. Factory grease does not last forever. Once it breaks down and contamination enters the boot, metal grinds against metal. Play develops in the steering. In a worst-case failure, the joint lets go completely and the wheel separates from the truck. Ball joint replacement runs $300 to $600 per side. If a failed joint damages the control arm, wheel bearing, or brake components, the total moves well past $2,000. A failed U-joint in the drive shaft adds $200 to $400, and if it lets go while moving, the consequences are not limited to a repair bill. Prevention costs $30 in tools and 5 minutes at every oil change. A grease gun runs $20 to $30. A tube of quality chassis grease costs around $5. Pump 2 or 3 shots into each fitting until you see fresh grease push out at the edge of the boot. That is the signal. Component protected. If your GMC has sealed components with no grease fittings, inspect every boot at each oil change. A torn boot lets contamination in and grease out. The component will fail much sooner once that seal is gone, and the warning is visible if you are looking for it. Here is what this comes down to. The flush machine takes your money and sets your transmission up for a rebuild you will never connect to the service. The stop leak bottle and the oil additives disrupt a precisely engineered system and often create more damage than the original problem. The oil life monitor on an AFM engine gives you false confidence during the exact mileage window when the engine is most vulnerable. The drain and fill keeps your transmission fluid healthy without disturbing settled debris. Seafoam in the fuel system prevents the carbon accumulation that costs $500 or more to remove mechanically. The bypass filter catches what your factory filter physically cannot and compounds the benefit of every oil change you do. The grease fittings take 5 minutes and prevent the kind of failure that can total a truck on a highway. 7 decisions. Every GMC owner makes all 7 of them, whether they know it or not. The owners running past 350,000 miles made the right ones. Start with whichever one you have been putting off. The grease fittings and the drain and fill are the easiest entry points, and both of them deliver results you will feel the next time you drive.